Hello, welcome to another Sunday video. Today I'm going to be talking about it's not easy being a Christian. Um, First, I want to talk about kind of my own experience with that. I've spent many years in churches and listening to um, preachers on TV and radio and stuff like that. And I've heard a lot of them talk about how, um, I mean, they didn't say this word for word, but it felt like they were talking about how great their life was. And I remember just feeling very misled about what it would be like to be a Christian. Um, Sometimes it almost sounded like a fantasy, like if you ask God into your heart, you'll get all these wonderful, I guess, blessings and presents and just all these things, these great things would happen to you and you just wouldn't have to suffer anymore through, I guess, bad things that happen to people. You just weren't going to have to go through that. So, um, I'll give you a good example of like at my previous church. I remember the pastor would always talk about like um, I don't know how else to describe it except it's like a blessing type um descriptions that he would just kind of have like um a teaching kind of every now and then about the blessings of God or the gifts of God that you would get, I guess, if you're following God. And he would kind of tell these things that were to me out of context. Like for example, I think he talked about one time how he and his wife were running down the road one time um and they just saw like uh, $100 bill float across the the um the front of the car, and they stopped and got it and picked it up, and they were able to go out to eat that night or something like that. And um and for me, hearing that out of context, as I would put it, it sounds like they're just walking along living their life, and they found $100 bill, like it was just something that just regularly happens. And there's just none of that sounds bad at all. There's no bad to it, nothing like that. And um and I mean, I've heard so many stories like that. Um you should follow God because these are the things that you get. And somebody will, a pastor will tell a story about this just wonderful thing that happened. And I remember just hearing that so much, I began to think that, it was going to be like a fantasy. It was just following God was just, well, I'll just be walking down the street and I'll find $100 bill. There's no effort, there's no pain, there's no nothing. That's what I used to think. Um, so I guess I just wanted to kind of let people know more of the truth to that. I think a lot of pastors tend to say things and tell stories like that because um, they want it to seem like um, well, they want people to follow God, of course, and they don't want people to think anything bad that would take them away from God. And I'm trying to be polite. I don't want to make it sound bad. Honestly, to me, it kind of feels like manipulation, but um, I'm trying to make it sound a little bit better than that because I do think there isn't any bad intentions in it. Um, I think it just tends to mislead because um, pastors and leaders are so desperate to get people to follow God. Excuse me. Apologize, I'm getting over a chest cold, but um, so with that, I don't want anybody to look down on a pastor or a leader if that's what's going on. Like, I think we all want people to follow God. We have our different ways of trying to achieve that. So, um, what I will say is, um, sorry, I lost my thought there for a second. Um, when a person is is telling you the story about, um, I guess the blessings of God, or the good things that happen. Um, I'll kind of try to give you a context for those things, even though, of course, I don't know all the stories you've heard, but I'll go ahead and give you a context that I learned later on for the story that I was telling. Um, so the pastor and his wife, from the church I was attending, um, like I learned the context, the bigger picture of the story later on. But this is what I learned about that story where they found the $100 bill. Apparently they had been um staying with somebody else, so they were essentially homeless. They didn't have their own home. They were living with one of their siblings, and they were really struggling with being able to afford food. They didn't have hardly any clothes. They didn't have hardly any possessions at all. They were just at a very low point in life, and I think they were even saying many days they didn't even have any money at all. There was just no money in any wallets. It was just a desperate situation. So knowing that that was the context, you can kind of see a little bit more, um, like what it's really like to follow God, essentially. Um, it's not all flowers and rainbows. It's yes, there are good times, there are bad times. And sometimes it really does feel like the bad times are worse. And and I don't know what it's like to not be saved because I've been saved for so many years, but um I tend to think it doesn't look that much different sometimes. I've seen people that don't have like I don't know how to say it except like a stronger walk with God. They tend to have more fear, and that does seem to lead them in, I don't even want to say worse situations. That tends to lead them in some very difficult situations. Um, but honestly, a lot of the walks with or without God, or if you want to say, not as good of a relationship, if you want to call it that, somebody in more fear than another person, maybe. Um, a lot of the things that people go through tend to look the same. I mean, you look at people's lives, it's not really that different, and that's what I want to stress, that like that just because you're a Christian doesn't mean it's gonna be excuse me, a lot of great things happen to you. Do good things do happen, but you know it happens to everybody, and bad things happen to everybody too. There's really nothing any different. You know, whenever you look at somebody, if you look at a pastor, they're going through just as much as you, and they're hurting probably equally to you. The only difference that I can kind of determine is like God can kind of help you get past some of the stresses, like let's say you have a bunch of stresses from your childhood. God can kind of release some of those stresses, even though you'll still have more stresses put onto you in the moment and the future. Some of your past stresses can be released, and God helps you kind of get over things a little bit easier than if you don't follow God. That's just my perception. Now, I don't really know if better things happen to people who are saved than if they're not, but um, I mean, I've been in a situation like for many years I was under my abusive mother. When I was living under her, there was a lot of like struggle, and I guess I'll just try to explain it like my relationship just was different with God back then. Yes, I was saved, but it was a lot of like bad situations that would happen because of my mother being in so much fear. Um, so all I can do is compare where I'm at now with what I went through then, but it was a lot different um, back then than it is now, mostly in the way that um, God, I just felt like more and more things were piling on me back then, and now God has released a lot of that. So So I guess that's the main difference I'd explain. Unfortunately, there's a lot more to say about it, but I'm gonna kind of just try to leave it at that, just because it's easier to go into detail, I think, in probably some future videos. But anyway, I just really want to stress that to people because it was really hurtful to me to find out how um, Christianity is not what I thought it was. Following God is not what I thought it was. And I don't want anybody to be misled in that way, the way that I was. So I guess I will leave it there, and I thank you for watching. Have a good day.